What's going on, guys? Zane here with Everything Vive. Want to welcome you back for another episode. I am joined by Ronnie. Ronnie, welcome back, man.
Hey, it's great. It's great to be back. Thanks. Yeah, I literally sorry everyone for being gone as long as I was. I was actually out of the country, and I had initially planned on at least doing the episode with the news and game talk, but due to all the craziness with the time difference and everything and short notice, we weren't able to make it happen. But I definitely got a chance to listen to how everything went when I came back, and just wanted to say I thought the interview with the Diner Duo guy went well. Zane, you did a great job, and then Damon, strong first showing on the podcast. I thought that was great as well. So
yeah, we had a fun conversation.
So yeah, but definitely glad to be back, and can't wait to continue on from this point forward, going on strong on the 55th episode.
Yes, sir. Well, no need to apologize. We all gotta do our thing every once in a while, but it is good to have you back. And what do you say? Let's jump right into it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. So we kind of belabored this point quite a bit last week, or at least the story quite a bit last week. But I do want to get your quick thoughts on the Zenimax and Oculus trial and case that just kind of came to a conclusion last week. Obviously, with Oculus owing $500 to Zenimax for, I guess ultimately it was just or primarily the NDA violation. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It's the NDA violations and also some copyright and trademark infringement issues. So
gotcha. Yeah,
basically the three main. I mean, just to say, I listened to Damon and your conversation about the case, and I actually thought you guys did a great job of hitting the major points.
Oh, thank you.
So kudos to that.
We wanted to get your opinion just from like a legal perspective. Nothing too well. I mean, no. However you want to look at it, because I know just in our previous or in our conversation before we hit record, you said you were still kind of going through all of the details from the case and everything that came out afterwards. But I'm just curious, like your quick reaction, and maybe any things that we might have missed, if you want to highlight those.
Yeah, sure. So, just as full disclosure, I only really got a chance to briefly look over the jury verdict. It included the instructions given to the jury, and then their decision regarding the damages and their findings. And I think previously I had looked at one of the early complaints. I'm not sure if Zenimax had amended it or anything like that. So by no means do I know the full details of how this case went procedurally and all of that. But like everybody else, I saw the verdict come through, and I did get a chance to look at kind of what the jury found. And I mean, you guys hit all the major points, like I said. The three main issues it looks like the jury had kind of looked at were trade secrets, the NDA, and copyright and trademark issues. And the trademark secrets it actually found in Oculus's favor, so that's good news for them. But the NDA, they ruled against Palmer Luckey and Oculus by extension, and then likewise with the copyright and trademark stuff. So I mean, the short end of it is, Zenimax got a pretty substantial judgment in their favor at the trial court level, but this is by no means over. And you guys had already talked about some of the consequences of Oculus and Facebook threatening to appeal. It's not even really a threat. They more or less said they will be appealing. So we know that that's probably going to happen. And then on top of that, Zenimax kind of, I don't know if it was a counter so much as just, them basically, flexing their muscles a little bit to say that they would possibly be looking into, seeking an injunction to enforce at least the copyright and trademark aspect of the jury's verdict.
Well, so that's actually one that I wanted to ask you about, because is that legitimate? Is there, would they have legitimate grounds to be able to not only file something but also win it? Just because since they didn't win the trade secret side, or the trade secret aspect. Like I'm just curious how they can still kind of flex that muscle if you know what I mean.
So I would have to look into the case a little bit more to confirm exactly what the copyrights were and what the trademarks were that the jury found were being infringed upon. But certainly, if Zenimax is able to show that Oculus is continuing to violate its copyrights and trademarks by certain actions that it's taking, I mean, the jury basically decided that there is infringement. And so if Zenimax can show that infringement is still occurring, then I would think they would have a decent shot at getting an injunction. Now, the caveat to all of that is that, like I said, I'd have to confirm to see what the copyrights and trademarks that are being infringed really are, and whether that's really that big of a deal or not in relation to Oculus's current activities. I mean, if it doesn't seem like this is the case, but if we're just talking about violations of trying to include Doom 3 as a pack-in with some of the early Oculus dev kits, if that's what they're focusing on, then obviously that's not a big issue. It's not really an ongoing thing. Then I don't think they would have a shot at really getting an injunction. Now if part of that copyright, and I do think part of that copyright does have to do with some of the underlying code related to the SDK. Some of that stuff was written by Carmack, at least in some form, according to the jury's decision, prior to him leaving Zenimax. And so Zenimax technically, according to this decision, has copyrights on some of that code. If that's what they decided, then you could see a judge, trying to enjoin that. At the same time, though, if Oculus appeals and kind of argues that the injunction shouldn't be granted until the appeal process is resolved or something like that, then that could kind of nullify that. The other aspect, and I'd have to know more about the precise details to kind of tell you whether or not I thought that was likely or not. Because with injunctions, it's all about, is there an imminent threat, and would they potentially win on the merits of the case if they were to win? If that's all the case, then they can at least get a temporary or a preliminary injunction, and then once they get the final decision, then that becomes more permanent. And so here, it's hard to say exactly what they'd be able to get, but likewise, I would think that Oculus is going to try their best, regardless of how this stuff, kind of shakes out. I would think that they'd be doing their best to try to clean up the code base to where they could come back and argue that, the stuff that their products that are out there now have been changed, are no longer infringing on these copyrights or trademark. Like that, I would assume that that's the best type of argument that you could make, given that the jury has found that there was some form of copyright infringement already. You're not going to, it's a little bit more of an uphill battle to try to somehow, wiggle around the fact that they made that decision. It's better to say, we understand that that's the decision. However, it's no longer really applicable because we're no longer violating that copyright. And, here's why. And then in that scenario, I don't think it would do much damage. So with the injunction side, I mean, do I think Oculus Rifts are going to be taken off the shelves because of the no, I don't think, because unlike patents, for example, copyrights and trademarks have to do with intellectual property, right? So the hardware itself isn't affected by those issues. So really the only thing you're really looking at is the underlying code. And that's something that you can fix with patches or software, I would think, to where you could kind of find a way around that. So based on my limited knowledge of the situation, I would say you're not going to see, Oculus is taken off the shelf as a result of all of this, at least in the, I think that's highly unlikely.
When we were talking last week, I think Damon brought up the point that it's more so it might just be like a bargaining chip or some type of threat to or not threat, but like more like motivation to get Oculus to get the proceedings done quickly, or at least settle, or whatever the case might be, just to kind of push them in the direction that Zenimax wants to go, rather than actually following through with it.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely possible, but at the same time, like, honestly, I don't know all the details of how the case got to this point to begin with, but it's kind of crazy to think that they went all the way to trial. I mean, most cases don't see trial because, prior to that stage of the game, usually one of the sides will kind of recognize that they have a weaker position, or recognize that they have a lot of money at stake by continuing. And both sides, there's always risks on either side, even if you're the strong, you have the strong arguments in the case. And so usually before trial, the parties come to some type of an agreement and they settle, and that's that. The fact that this went all the way to trial and ended with a verdict makes me think that these parties are not really working well together.
That's a great point. Yeah.
And it seems like Zenimax might be spiteful about losing a guy like Carmack, about missing out on an opportunity like this. Oculus might be, super upset that they think Zenimax is trying to take advantage of the fact that VR has such seems like it has such a big upside, and they're trying to capitalize on that. Like, I mean, there's just so many aspects of this that could be more personal than I think some people would like. Again, the fact that it just went all the way, and you had even had Mark Zuckerberg testifying in the first case that he's ever had to testify in, and all of that. Like, I mean, this is like it's pretty crazy that it came to that, and so to think that they're going to, now really just bury the hatchet and kind of move on. It's possible, but it seems like both parties are a little bit stubborn about who they think is in the right and who's in the wrong.
And based on Carmack's response after the verdict was given,
exactly.
There's no love lost between both sides.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of the thing is, like, I think both sides think they're right about this. And I think given it is a really tricky situation. So it's not really, when you have two parties that have such strong opinions, I feel like that's like almost the only time where a settlement isn't possible. And I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. I mean, the other thing, I guess, just the last kind of sticking points as far as how the appeals process works. Basically, they have a certain Oculus and Facebook will have a certain amount of time to file notice of their appeal, and once they do that, they'll most likely be given a certain amount of time to file their appeal brief. So you have a very limited amount of time to give notice to the other side that you're going to be appealing. And my understanding is they haven't done that yet. Once they do that, the court then gives them a certain amount of time, most likely, and assuming that they agree, and then the appeal brief gets filed. And once that appeal brief gets filed, that's when we'll know what the issues on appeal actually are. And for lay people, sometimes not everyone always realizes this. There's only a limited number of there's only a limited type of argument that you can make once the trial courts and a jury has made a verdict. So it's not like you get to appeal and rehear the case all over again from scratch. That's not how appeals work. Basically, all of the determinations of fact that the jury made, unless you can show that there's and there was an error made in either the application of law or the application of law, or there was an abuse of discretion on the part of the court, which are kind of similar, somewhat related. Unless those things occurred, then the jury verdict, those determinations of fact stand. So it's not like you can say, I think the jury was wrong, I'm going to appeal. That you can't appeal that.
Mm-hmm.
What you have to say is, well, the law was misapplied, so that the instructions that the jury were provided were incorrect, and that led them to a wrong verdict. That's the only, or there was something prejudicial about how the trial went at the lower court level that makes their ultimate ruling void. Like you can only appeal on those types of issues. And usually, especially in a big case like this, I'm sure that they were, doing their best to kind of, preserve certain issues for appeal, that they kind of realized, this is a potential issue that we could appeal if it came to that, blah, blah. So I'm sure they already have an idea of exactly what the issues are that they intend to appeal. And I wouldn't be surprised after listening to, or not listening, but after reading Carmack's, opinion of what happened, that, they don't somehow try to point out that the jury was, fed misinformation or something. I don't know. But just like I said, it's not like, it's not that we're in an unlimited, set of an unlimited universe of possibilities here regarding the appeal. Facebook and Oculus can only make certain types of arguments at this point in order to potentially try to get a new crack at this. So it'll be interesting once we see what that appeal brief looks like. Then we can go back and say, okay, like this is kind of, then you can kind of analyze whether you think, they're really going to have a shot at moving forward with this, or if they are going to try to settle or just pay or whatever. So
yeah, well, I mean, like you said, this is going to trickle on for a while, and I don't want to stay too much on it now, because we are going to need to wait for more information to come out. Just to see where it goes. But yeah, it's really crazy stuff. So
it definitely is, and I mean, I had a brief thought. Well, anyways, yeah, I mean, yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it goes, and just kind of the final. I mean, one of the things that kind of stuck with me when I was hearing about Mark Zuckerberg's his testimony, besides the fact that he didn't know who Zenimax was, which I thought was kind of a ridiculous thing to say, but whatever. One of the things that kind of stuck with me about his testimony that was really, a positive sign was just the fact that the company does view its project with the Oculus and virtual reality as being a more long-term type of game. I mean, while maybe the progress of Oculus has been a little bit less than stellar so far, considering everything that's been happening. Still, he really does still think that virtual reality and AR are going to be the future of a future, computing platform. And
he invested at least $2 billion in it. I mean, you gotta go and show some support when you've invested that much money.
I mean, that's certainly true. So, but yeah, I mean, just the fact though that they view it as, hey, in 10 years, we'll, we're a long way to go, and still in this medium, and we are in some ways just at the Pong stage of what virtual reality will eventually look like once everything's said and done. So any kind of hiccups with how Oculus does now or anything they're all kind of drops in the bucket probably in the long term. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so let's move on then. I got another news topic here before we get into game talk, and this one isn't Well, it's not fresh news, but it came out last week, and I just thought that it was just relevant to a lot of the discussions that you and I have had regarding just I guess the life cycles and generations of these headsets and where they're going to go. And so, in an interview, Alvin Wang, who is the HTC China regional president of Vive, which is quite the long title there, but he was talking about the life cycle of the Vive and I guess just headsets in general. And he was saying that they would follow something similar to a smartphone cycle, but not that quickly. So not as fast. So it wouldn't be on a year by year basis like you see something like the iPhone, for example. And it also wouldn't take as long as consoles, which I want to say are between like 5 to 6 years between generations. And so he was saying, something like, think of going like iPhone 6 to iPhone 7, it's like 2 to 3 years rather than, so like a middle ground between those. The idea was that, they would use accessories on a yearly basis. So you see something like the audio strap coming out later this year, the Vive tracker coming out later this year. Like they'd use these accessories between major releases to keep things fresh. So, it's, I don't know. What do you think of it? Because we've been talking about Lifecycle, we've been talking about Vive 2, and there's been all this chatter about Vive 2. When's the next generation dropping? This seems much more reasonable to me. And I mean, obviously, like this sounds like the game plan that they're going with. But I mean, what do you think of like the idea of first, 2 to 3 years between cycles, and then second, how do you feel about accessories being, the quote unquote items that will keep things fresh?
Sure. So I do agree with you. I mean, in terms of, I think the amount of time that they're talking about is pretty reasonable. So as far as a 2 to 3 year lifespan for a kit, I think that's probably where I would want to see it. Not in terms of, your average person isn't going to be able to upgrade every cycle maybe, but it's that fine balance of making things affordable and worthwhile for the consumers, while at the same time not holding back the technology and really moving things forward in a space that has plenty to offer. So in that regard, I think 2 to 3 years is kind of a nice middle ground. We'll see innovation when it makes sense for innovation, but at the same time, you're not buying your headset and then getting immediately burnt when the next version comes out in 6 months. So that's all good. As far as the accessory point, I mean, I kind of already expected like probably more of a 3 year cycle plus. If you wouldn't have told me any of that kind of stuff and just asked me what I thought, I probably would have expected like maybe a couple years from now. The Vive came out in April of 2015, right? Or no, 2016.
Yeah.
So I would expect probably in a couple years from now that there would be a second version of the Vive. I mean, that 2 years from now is a pretty long ways out in terms of how fast this stuff has all been moving. I mean, just 2 or 3 years ago from where we're looking at right now, I mean, we were just dealing with Oculus dev kits, right? So all that stuff is pretty, reasonable, right? But kind of putting that into perspective and knowing that there is likely going to be a second version of the headset coming in 2 years, that does make me hesitate a little bit about spending high amounts of money on accessories that may or may not be compatible with future versions. And so I would like some reassurance on that front. So I think if you're going to, a good example is how we deal with accessories on cell phones. I mean, there's some accessories for cell phones that you have to get new versions of every time you get a phone, right? Like if I buy a new iPhone or a new Android phone, I'm probably going to have to get a new case, but it's relatively inexpensive to do that.
Yeah.
Versus if I buy $200 pair of headphones to enjoy music on my iPhone or whatever, you have a strong sense when you put down that money that that's a good investment because you're going to be able to use those headphones across multiple devices that you're going to own over time. So you're willing to make that, for people that care about that type of an experience, it's not like you're investing $200 to only use those headphones with your current phone and you're going to have to plunk it down again when the new phone comes out. So likewise with Vive and VR headsets in general, depending on what the price point for stuff like premium head straps and wireless kits and all that stuff is going to be, I'd be curious. I mean, the wireless is probably a little bit less because that might just be a stopgap to make the current Vive a little better or a lot better. And maybe future versions are all going to be wireless and who cares. But stuff like the premium head strap or other accessories that, add something that even a future version of the kit may not have, like a premium head strap, for example. Like that kind of accessory might just be too expensive to package with the product as a whole. But so they package it as a separate accessory. I would want some kind of reassurance or some type of knowledge that stuff is going to continue to be compatible with future versions.
No, that's a good point. So here are two quick thoughts, just kind of in response to what you're saying. In regards to the life cycle. So now let's just compare it to smartphones for a second. These things come out every year and they cost, between $600, $700, $800, which is roughly the cost of a Vive. Or one of these headsets, if you think about it. And I'm just talking about like the price tag on, if you buy one of these things brand new out of the box. I know there's a lot of subsidized plans, a lot of things like that, depending on if you sign contracts and whatever. But my point being is that like these are like $600 investments or $600 to $800 investments that people make every year. Not everybody, but they make them every year. And the one thing that I want to say really aids in that or allows people to do that is trade-in value. Being able to trade in a relatively in good condition older phone or older model to get some credit towards going towards the newer model. And I just wonder if that will be applied in some way. So like if you were an HTC Vive 1 owner, or whatever the original, if you were just an HTC Vive owner now, and they come out with either next year or the year after the HTC Vive 2, will there be some trade-in? I don't know. I don't think trade-in would ever really work, but I would almost look at it as maybe like a customer loyalty, customer appreciation type of thing. Like if you bought a Vive, would you be able to get some type of discount going into the next one? And looking at the console side of things, which is every 5 to 6 years, obviously that's not the case, not even remotely close to being the case. But I'm just wondering if there's going to be like a split the difference type of middle ground here, just because the user base is really small, and you want to be able to reward. At this point, the user base is really small, and you'd want to be able to reward customers who have been supporting you in your early versions while it's still, it's not mainstream yet. It's still very much early adopter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And actually, if a company like HTC were to subsidize, newer versions of the hardware for users that were early adopters, obviously I would be all for that. I think that'd be amazing, but I think that's, we'd be hard pressed. I think that'd be really expensive to do.
I'm just trying to throw the idea out there. So if they're listening.
Yeah. No, I hear you. And that would be, and it's, obviously nothing's out of the question. Everything's possible. So if you could do something like that, some kind of a trade-in, that would be incredible. But it seems like that would be doubtful. And then as far as trade-in, I think looking at cell phones, I think most people tend to skip a generation. Like, it seems like there's usually you kind of have to wait 2 refreshes really see a big.
Yeah, most of the time because
like
they'd have like a 2-year contract. But yeah, no, I know what you're saying.
But I mean, in that regard, because of the 2-year contract, you see the devices themselves. The really moving from one version of a phone to the direct next version. You see some upgrades, but like in general, it's pretty minimal. But then if you step up from that one and you skip one and move to the next one, then you see more of a jump, right? And so I think for a lot of people, they usually kind of wait. Like, yeah, I mean, and that would be similar to what we're looking at with the Vive, right? I mean, they're proposing 2 to 3 years, and yeah, most people do upgrade their phones probably every 2 to 3 years. If I were to guess, that seems probably very common. Like, there's people that do it that switch out their phones probably once a year, more frequently, and then there's probably people that wait 2, 3, or I mean, even 3, 4 years plus, and then probably I would probably think a decent majority are used to now the model where every 2 years their contract expires, they get a new phone, blah blah blah. Though, by the way, I mean we're kind of seeing. I mean, a lot of those trends became ingrained in people because carriers were providing subsidies on phones, and that's becoming less and less of a thing. So I would argue that up until recently, most people weren't necessarily, at least consciously, paying $600, $700, $800 for their phones when they were getting them. They were being subsidized, or they were paying, at such a small, amount each month that they didn't really feel the burn as much as like most people would feel if they just plunked down $800 on a Vive. So
yeah, true.
So that's another thing that, like, if you're an HTC or an Oculus and you really want people to continue to upgrade, you need to maybe start thinking about ways of making that sting a little bit less hurtful or painful.
Well, and we can kind of assume, maybe we shouldn't assume, but I want to be hopeful and also say that the prices of these things might go down in the next couple of years. I mean,
no, they want to. So,
I mean,
that's
like,
a good point.
Just for the longevity and the growth of the market, I feel like they'd have to, right? That has to be one of the main focuses of being able to make it cheaper so that you can sell it cheaper.
For sure. No, I mean, we know for a fact with the lighthouses, for example, they're trying to make them simpler so they can, potentially at one point sell them at a cheaper cost. So that stuff's all true. I mean, there's a lot of other complicating factors as far as trying to compare, I think, the state of cell phones with how VR has been moving. I mean, VR, going back to what I mentioned before with, just a few years ago, we were looking at development kits as being, the cream of the crop, the most advanced technology out there. And compared to those development kits, the high-end headsets that we have now are night and day, much better experiences. I mean, it's almost more like trying to compare, like a Trio to a modern day iPhone, rather than trying to compare the more, smaller steps. So what do I mean by that? I mean, so far at least, there have been really big jumps in technology between major releases of headsets. And if that continues, then there's more pressure, I think, on the owner of the headset to upgrade than there are on phones. For phones, you kind of upgrade when you feel ready. But if VR technology increases at an exponential rate, then for a lot of people, they won't really feel like they get to upgrade if they want to or not. They'll almost feel pressured to upgrade if they want to continue, with this as a hobby. So that's another thing to consider. And then I also think that you see this trend also. I mean, I think all these companies are trying to move towards this more regular cycle of upgrades. Even consoles, which you're right, were typically around 5-6 years. They would sometimes say 10, but that never really actually holds true. I feel like it was more like 5-ish years per console, like you said. But now, for the first time ever, we're seeing, we saw the release of the PlayStation 4 Pro, which is one of those mid steps between a PlayStation 4 and a potential next generation PlayStation. And then also we're going to see another iteration of the Xbox One with the release of Scorpio later this year. And those are bigger. Those are pretty big upgrades. We're not just talking about, some more space on the hard drive or something. These are actual substantive releases. So I think everything's starting to move into this model every 2-3 years.
It's a matter of trying to stay relevant. The market moving so quickly.
Yeah, and everything. I mean, just technology in general is moving at such a fast pace. I feel like these time periods are getting shorter and shorter. So it's all interesting stuff. And I'm sure they're kind of playing with exactly how they want to deal with this stuff. And I mean, we also want VR to continue to expand, and nothing really expands markets like new products. So if the Vive just stays the Vive for the next 5-6 years, I don't really see, unless some really killer software comes out that really just convinces new people to come out in droves. I don't think there's really going to be a better way to bring people to the table than a new hardware release. So that's another exciting thing. Like if they did it right, a Vive 2 could get a lot of Vive owners on board, if not most of them, plus a substantial amount of new people. I mean, I'm sure that's their goal with releasing a new piece of hardware. So
yeah, I mean, there'll be a lot of people who would have tried the Vive and are waiting for the next generation release. Maybe not even for like the financial reasons, but just because they want something that's just a little bit more refined.
Yeah, and for all we know, that's going to be the magic spot. Maybe 2-3 generations from now, with substantially beefed up feature sets, VR becomes the thing that people just can't ignore.
Exactly. Well, it definitely seems like it's getting there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on and transition. That's a long-winded conversation, but let's transition over and quickly do some game talk. We each have a game this week. I don't know if you want to go first or second or what.
Yeah. I mean, how about you go actually? Because I feel like I was just like talking my okay. throat off now over this.
Sure, no problem. So I got Castle Must Be Mine. And I was kind of just browsing around for a game, and on Steam, when you sort by user reviews, this just kind of was unassumingly on the first page. It's $11.99 US dollars, and when I was going through the reviews, people were talking about how it's probably one of the best strategy games out there right now, and it's still very wave based. But I gotta say, I got it a couple of days ago, and I'm hooked, man. I'm having a lot of fun with it. There's a lot of there's a level I can't get past, which is why I keep revisiting it. But
I've been there.
it's a lot of fun. So you're building towers and upgrading these towers, and you have a map where you have enemies coming in trying to attack your castle. You have a certain amount of health points, and you have a certain amount of money that you're allowed to spend on building and upgrading towers. Now, the towers that you can put the towers in, predefined spaces. So it's not like you have complete flexibility, but you do get to decide, where you want to put the towers, which ones you want to upgrade first, and then also what type of tower it is. There's 3 different towers, and they also focus primarily, they have different strengths and weaknesses, and it's a lot of it is are relative. In terms of strength compared to the enemies that you faced. So sometimes there'll be airborne enemies and you can't attack them with a cannon. You'll need a crossbow. And sometimes you'll have, magic-based enemies that you'll need to... There's a magic tower as well, I guess, for... I think that's what it's called. But it's really cool. It's very simple, actually, when you look at it. And so it reminds me of Laser Bait. Again, not necessarily in terms of gameplay, or even strategy, but just in terms of I guess the type and the feel is very different. So I guess maybe I don't want to make that comparison too strong, but it's I guess maybe I'm just a sucker for strategy games. Like I mean that's good company to be in. If you're comparing it to Laserbait, which I thought
yeah, we both loved. So
Yeah, so it's just a lot of fun, and like I said, there's so many levels to it, or at least a decent amount of levels that I've gone through so far, in the couple times that I've played it. I'm stuck at one of the higher ones now, but like every single time I play it, I try to do something different, try to have a different approach, and it's just yeah, I mean, if you're into strategy games at all, I would recommend this one highly. And now I understand there's a reason that it's sitting on the first page. When you sort by user reviews, like it definitely lives up to the hype. And at $12, it's not going to break the bank. And again, we always talk about not making price point a big deal in this, but I want to point it out because of the simple fact that a lot of that, I want to say a lot of like and I'm using air quotes here, but like the quality games or AA games or games that are, that everybody talks about as being, top tier, are usually between $20 and $40. And so for something to be under 15 at $12, I just feel like this is a no-brainer. And so you may not like it if you're not really into strategy games, but if you liked Laserbait, if you like any type of strategy based, again, it's still wave based, but if you like strategy and being able to set up things, I never played the game out of ammo, but I did see some video gameplay for it, and it's similar to that. It's okay. I don't want to. I'm drawing too many comparisons now, but I want to say it's similar in style to that, where you can build towers and build items and things like that. And so that's just it comes to mind when I'm thinking about this game. But yeah, I don't know. It's a lot of fun.
okay, very cool. Just curious. I mean, you didn't mention it, so I'm guessing no. But does it have multiplayer by any chance?
So it doesn't, at least not what I've seen so far, and I'm not exactly sure how you would implement multiplayer, whether it would be co-op or competitive. But okay. I mean, there's definitely a space for or a way to do it, and I think like eventually, a lot of these wave-based games are eventually going to grow into something like I think what everybody wants to see is a Warcraft or Age of Empires or some classic strategy game that you played back in the day, but now you're able to kind of play it in VR, and so. It's just baby steps. It's not even anywhere close to that. But, I think we're definitely getting there in terms of, that now you have like a board in front of you in a sense, like you're playing almost like this bird's eye view God mode where you're able to control a lot of things from the air. And so VR is just going to change a lot in this realm when it comes to strategy type games. And so I'm excited to see where this one goes specifically. It's in early access as well, but it looks like the developer's been adding quite a bit to it. And actually I posted on Reddit earlier, and so I don't know if anybody knows the contact information for the developer. Would love to have him on the show, him or her.
Okay.
Don't want to assume, but would love to have them or the team on the show. And so there wasn't a website, there wasn't anything associated online. So I'll keep digging and try to do research. But if you do know the developer or want to pass them, I guess our interest in terms of wanting to get them on the show, would really appreciate that.
Well, very cool. Yeah, I was actually ironically, like, as you were talking, I was thinking, oh man, like this really sounds like a game Zane's into. It sounds like something cool that, it seems like a good opportunity to talk to the developer or developers if they'd be available. So yeah, if anybody can help out with getting us in contact with them, that would be great.
For sure. And, so that's all I got. I actually want to hear a lot about your game because I was hearing about it beforehand, and then when you mentioned it, when we jumped on the phone, I was like, yes, now I can get a first-hand account from you. So go ahead.
Yeah, so the game I am going to talk about is Racket NX, and it is a new early access game that was released on Steam just a few days ago. Kind of late January is when the initial release date was, and it's up on Steam right now for about $20. I think $19.99, and yeah, I kind of just felt compelled to pick it up because. Most of the reviews so far have just been overwhelmingly positive. I mean, really, people going out there and saying that this is one of their favorite games on the Vive, and so I had to give it a shot. And I definitely would say that I came back rather impressed. I haven't played a ton of it yet, probably only about an hour or so. And I will confess that I am not particularly great at racquetball / pong type games. So this one, like, it took me a little bit to get the hang of, like, I'm still trying to fully understand how the rule set works. And I'm going to try to actually go online a little bit later to see if I can find more information about how you actually play the game. Because right now, since it is an early access title, there is kind of a how to play kind of category in the options or the settings, but it's grayed out and you can't click it. So
okay.
literally, I get in. So I get into the game, and possibly for you, Zane, if you fired it up, you would right away get the concepts and totally understand the rules just by kind of messing around with it. I just feel like, me personally, I've played some of these other racquetball type games on the Vive that were released previously, and it's just not always super intuitive to me. But that said, like, I don't want to take away from the awesomeness of this game. I'm putting those caveats out there just to say that those were my limitations as far as engaging with this type of a game, because even for someone that hasn't been super into those games, this one, I feel like it was money well spent. Because even at the early access, I mean, just from top to bottom, this game, I would say, honestly, as far as polish is concerned, I mean, it feels as polished as something like Zortex in the lab, for example. And that's something, and the reason I'm bringing that up is because part of the aesthetic kind of feels like that. It's very Tron-esque in that you start the game up and you're on a platform floating in space. And I'd actually say, like, as far as space-themed menus are concerned, I'd say this game has the best one that I've ever seen in a Vive game. I mean, it's really, like, I mean, the fidelity of kind of, seeing asteroids in the distance and stars and, like, I'm not sure if it's a moon or a planet or what, but everything looks great, and it really feels appropriately scaled and very tangible and very, very real. And then you're, from that platform, I mean, another thing that's really great about this game, and I'll caution people that have really small room scale setups, I don't think you need a huge room scale setup, but I do think the more room you have, the better, the more you'll enjoy the game, because this game truly is like 360 degrees all around you and really takes advantage of that. So like I said, based on, I think, your play area, you start out on this round platform, and space is kind of all around you, and that's where you're looking at all of your menus, and the menus are completely in a circle around you. So you can literally just walk around the circle, like rotate, and access all of your menu options. And there's an arcade mode, there's a normal single player mode, there's a multiplayer mode, though I haven't gotten to try that yet. And then there's options and a couple other stuff. And basically, once you pick, let's say you pick arcade mode, you pick it, and all of a sudden, from the bottom of the platform that you're standing on, all these little hexagons just kind of grow from there. Kind of think like, I don't know, Cerebro and X-Men, for example, where now you're in this, like, domed environment that's made up of a bunch of hexagons. Like, now all of a sudden you're in that environment, and it's time to play the game. And your controller is now kind of this Tron kind of, see-through neon bracket type thing. And now you're hitting a ball against all the walls, and each panel will light up differently. And based on those patterns, like, it's pretty obvious the sections that light up bright green are the ones that you're trying to hit, as far as I know. And then based on, I mean, like I said, this is where it gets kind of hard for me, because I don't fully understand how racquetball works, and I definitely don't understand exactly what the rules are like in this, because I feel like sometimes I'm always just aiming for the green, and I think I'm doing well, and then all of a sudden I get a game over. I'm like, what did I don't know what I was supposed to be doing, but that's that. Like none of that. I think for a lot of people, they'll probably understand the rules better than I do, and just everything looks great, feels amazing. One of the things that go ahead.
How's like the feedback on?
Yeah, that's the one of the strongest thing. And this is high praise coming from me, honestly. But I would say this is like the racquetball equivalent of like a space pirate trainer.
Wow.
In terms of things feel really like the physics on the ball and the feedback you get from the environment when you're hitting the panels. There's probably more types of panels that I haven't seen yet, but I started seeing these weird kind of panels where they were almost like vortexes. So if I hit one of those panels, the ball would kind of get sucked into like a little, like almost like a black hole, and then it would spit out from another side of the room. And all that stuff feels great, works well, works like you'd expect it to. And really the feedback from, like, one of the things that I saw a lot in reviews, and I couldn't agree more, is that it really feels like anything you do with that racket translates into an effect on the ball. So literally, if you change the angle of your racket ever so slightly, you feel like it does actually have like
It makes a difference, huh?
Yeah, a consistent difference too. It's not like, because obviously, I mean, like the fidelity of the Vive is great enough where it's gonna pick that stuff up. But like in other games I've played, it doesn't always feel like everything reacts exactly as you intended, or sometimes you feel like you didn't put that much force on it, and somehow the game decides that you were, trying to slam the ball and it just like hits super hard or barely hits at all, or like everything about this feels right. When you move it a certain way, it has the effect on the ball that you expect it to have. If you put a little bit more speed or power into your movement, you get a little bit more speed or power on the ball. Like everything just feels like it's reacting the way it should, which makes playing the game just feel right. And so I think this is still an early access game. So there isn't, there's a decent amount of stuff to be had. I mean, in the time I spent, I've really just played the arcade mode and a little bit. I'm referring to it as a single player mode. I don't remember the exact name of the mode, but it's almost like, it's based on the rules of the game. So rather than just trying to get a high score, it's more limited, and it's almost like a time trial type. It's not time trial, but it's just the single player is like a more limited, you've played by the rules, and if you don't follow the rules, your game is over kind of deal.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so those are the only modes I played. There is a multiplayer mode. According to the Steam store, some of the multiplayer has been a little bit glitched out and buggy, but I don't know the status on that. They said they were dealing with it, and that was right around release, so it may be perfectly up and running by now. I want to try that out. I just didn't feel, given my lack of knowledge of the rules, I wanted to kind of wait until I got a better feel for the game before I tried doing that. But who knows? I mean, if you're able to talk like you usually can in a Vive multiplayer game, sometimes I've learned that multiplayer is kind of the best way to learn how to play sometimes. So I might have to try that just to see if I can find someone that can explain to me exactly.
Yeah, that'd probably be the best way to go into it.
So, but I mean, definitely really cool. And like I said, just mechanically very sound, very well polished. And the fact that this is such an early access title, if the feature set expands in this, like you see from games like Space Pirate Trainer, for example, then I think this is a no-brainer and definitely a really cool game for people to pick up.
Very cool. Well, there you have it. Recommendation for Racket NX. But yeah, man, you got anything else?
No, that's pretty much it. I want to play some more of that. And, actually have another game that I'm looking forward to trying to get into a little bit. I picked up Snow Fortress a long time ago, and I haven't really played it that much yet. It was I recently saw it come up as part of a Viveport collection, so I'm kind of thinking about trying that out maybe for next week, but we'll see.
Cool. Yeah, well, we'll save that for next week. Yeah, man. Well, that's all I got. So let's go ahead and cut this episode here then.
Sure.
It's good to have you back, and
thank you very much.
And yeah, so for everyone listening, thank you guys for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. And again, we are on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube. So please subscribe, like, comment, do all that good stuff, and definitely keep the conversation going. If there's games you want us to check out, definitely let us know on YouTube, and let us know what you think of these games if you've given them a try, because I'm a huge fan of Castle Must Be Mine, and it sounds like Racket NX is something that I'll have to get into as well. So yeah, we'll see where things go from there. But Ronnie, you have a fantastic rest of the week, man.
Thank you very much, Zane. It's great to be back, and yeah, let's talk again soon.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, take care and talk soon.